Hello, everybody. It's Max with Crypto Talk Now. I thought I would go ahead and basically wrap up our coverage in regards to the Cybos guide for Quant. Without further ado, let's just jump right into that. And if anything, this of course comes officially from Quant Network, their particular website, and so on. But check this out. You know, we covered, of course, a few of these things in regards to the interoperability, the distributed ledger technology, institutional digital assets, especially that particular, right? We didn't touch so much on the tokenized money because in that particular section, there wasn't quite enough coverage in that regard. But on the subject of central bank digital currencies, CBDCs, I thought I would fast forward to a key area that I want to go over. So, if anything, listen to what Gilbert Verdian has to state in regards to this. And of course, come back for some commentary. I'm going to go ahead and basically full screen this. You guys can see it a little bit better. And of course, I'm going to have to pause it in certain areas. But it's not too long. And of course, we'll come right back.
No, it is. Technology is great, and how you implement and develop it, but it's really driven by the human need, and that's really shaped by policy. What does this mean for people? What does this mean for businesses? I think CBDCs are no longer a fictional concept. These are real. They are happening. It's really driven from the top down. It's not just the central banks, but the governments of countries are putting policy out there saying we will have a CBDC, we will have a more digital economy. It increases GDP, creates jobs, and it makes us more competitive in the global landscape. Personally, I think CBDCs are a great tool for not only the technology side, having payments automated and programmable and smart, but also on the policy side. It really gives central banks the ability to control monetary and fiscal policies in a new way.
More granular?
It's more granular. You have better visibility of risk, from a resilience and systemic risk perspective. If we had CBDCs, we probably wouldn't have had the financial crisis in 2008.
Think about that for a second. What he just basically mentioned, Gilbert. Probably wouldn't have had that financial crisis of 2008. Especially here in the United States with recession and so on. Having this particular technology, basically, it kind of reminds you of, for instance, if you've ever seen it, Minority Report, right? But from a different aspect, right? I'm not talking about specifically, predicting crimes before they happen or anything like that. But can you imagine distributed ledger technology, right? DLTs, and what Quant could basically bring to the table as far as those type of technologies and apply it to government's monetary policies, that particular need, and so on. Being able to have such advanced technology to see, I guess you could say, on the blockchain, if you will, and in other aspects, to see that there is a crisis that is about to be here on the near horizon, and how we could basically prevent that. Now, I get the whole statement of, for instance, Quant isn't a blockchain and so on, right? They are just that in itself, right? The operating system, the software. So again, more focus on that particular technology and whatnot. And if you're interoperable, right, you provide that interoperability, like they've countless times have mentioned, Gilbert and so on. If you have that interoperability, you would also have that type of advanced technology to predict basically some of these things that he outlined that happened in 2008. So I'm going to go ahead and just wrap that up right there. I want to show you guys some other info and news updates that I definitely want to share in regards to Quant. And it's back to our main subject, basically. I'm, of course, going to come back into the frame. And that basically is the statement of Quant not being, technically speaking, Bitcoin with utility. And of course, for the purposes of this video, I'm going to prove the statement, not just for me stating it basically. You'll hear from Gilbert outline just that in itself. And of course, we'll get more into that and so on, as well as some other great news updates. But the reason why I will keep pounding it home again and again about Quant being basically Bitcoin with utility is for some of these reasons you're going to see here in a bit. And if anything, I think it will squash the whole debate. Personally, I understand that there's always going to be that type of person out there who's going to state it's not and so on. But that's where we respectively agree to disagree. But if anything, check this out. I want to show you guys this, and of course, shout out to Greg LUNC, who almost every other day, posts these great types of tweets and so on. Quant basically equals hybrid security, right? A lot of times we put a lot of focus on what Quant brings to the table as far as the interoperability and so on, but there is a lot to be said about security in itself. So it says, quote, "Our approach is a good mix of traditional security controls and decentralized technology, which is ready for institutions." This is going to take about a minute, and then we'll come right back.
It's not easy to secure infrastructure, and it's not easy to secure money. In traditional systems, in banking and capital markets, all of those applications and infrastructure are very well protected. They're under many layers of firewalls, and so they're very difficult to access. And the issue is anyone can start probing and interacting with these cross-chain bridges and start finding vulnerabilities and holes. So we've solved that, and we set out to solve that early on. We've created a hybrid approach where you are working with bridges, but those are not easily probable or accessible to third parties. You have to use a protected infrastructure of what we've developed to be able to interact with these bridges. So it's secure smart contracts. It's not just a smart contract on the chains. And our approach, we believe, is really a good mix of traditional security controls and decentralized technology in the right way, which is ready for institutions.
So again, shout out to Greg LUNC, who basically provided this. And guys, what I was going to mention is, one of the key things that Gilbert basically mentions right there, secure smart contracts, right? There's a lot of other, crypto projects out there and so on. Heck, I'm even into it, right? Cardano really stands out, right? Quality smart contracts. But secured smart contracts, think about the value in that itself. Huge for the likes of Quant. A little bit more in regards to our coverage before we kick it into what I would refer to as the proof, if you will, that Quant is basically Bitcoin with utility. You're going to want to stay to the end for this particular one. But anyway, check this out. This again comes from Quant Papa. Of course, it's not in regards to the whole, Bitcoin with utility quote, but I like this. And if anything, I'm going to go ahead and on this particular one, do a full screen because you might not be able to see it as well right there. But check this out, and of course we're going to blow this up a little bit more. And this of course came from Quant Pop originally, but I wanted to highlight some of what you see here. Of course, he highlights where it says multi-ledger, but even on our live show, right, it gets brought up quite a bit. A person who's not familiar with Quant will go into, for instance, the CMC listing, and they'll see the contract, and it's like, oh no, ERC20, right? This is Ethereum. And it's like, they don't quite have fathomed the idea that, over Ledger, or I should say Quant, right? You are basically investing into their software, their operating system, over Ledger, right? So, again, they see the contract, and they're like, well, technically speaking, Quant is an ERC20 token. So let's just take a brief moment to give those type of people the a broader perspective on how this is broken down, and even some people, of course, that have done more research into Quant and so on. This is very useful information. So it says, while ERC20 tokens are designed for deployment on the Ethereum network, QRC20 tokens will be blockchain agnostic and work across multiple distributed ledger technologies, right? DLTs. They can be implemented on-chain, which is public DLTs, or off-chain, private DLTs, to enable complex operations between different DLT technologies such as cross-chain atomic swaps and multi-ledger tokens. Overledger's DLT gateway uses an innovative and standardized REST API based on internet architecture and protocols to connect different DLTs and blockchains. Now listen to this key part. It says similarly, instead of using cryptocurrency like ETH, right, for gas to conduct transactions or execute contracts, Overledger, on the other hand, Overledger's transactions are powered by the Quant utility token with seamless fiat, or I should say fiat, payment options available for corporate customers. So again, their utility token would technically be the QRC tokens, right? It says it's important to note that Overledger is a DLT gateway and doesn't store data or information. Instead, it works as an abstraction platform that orchestrates interactions between various ledgers. All the data is encrypted at the source and cannot be accessed or manipulated. In this way, Overledger helps facilitate a highly secure decentralized blockchain system catered for the security needs of corporate clients. And again, I think that's what sets them apart, because if anything, it is something that sits above these blockchains, but isn't an actual blockchain, right? Overledger sits above that, or on top of that, I should say. I just definitely want to point that out and kind of give people a broader perspective in that regard, because it does get brought up quite a few times, looking at Quant and how it is, technically speaking, an ERC20 token. All right. A little bit more in regards to our particular coverage. I'm going to come back, of course, into the frame on this particular one. And let me just go take a moment just to do this. So, for instance, there's a little bit more in this regard. There's this right here. And, of course, this is, again, like the subject of the thumbnail that you guys basically saw and so on. And it's something that was brought up a while back, right? So this was posted all the way back in June of 2021. And the reason why I feel as though that this is proof, if you will, that Quant is basically like Bitcoin, but with utility, is, of course, for all the reasons I mentioned before. For instance, like on CMC, lower circulating supply, lower max supply, lower total supply, right? All those indicators. What makes, of course, Bitcoin so attractive, that scarcity, if you will. But when you see this, and I'm, of course, read this all verbatim because I don't want to miss a single thing here, right? It pounds it home that much more. Gilbert Verdian realized years ago, right? We're talking like all the way back into the late 90s, 1997, for crying out loud. He had a vision, and of course, by 2008, that vision was kind of realized, but he wanted, of course, see how the times were evolving with technology to get where Quant is today. Now, after I show this to you, you're not convinced that Quant is basically the quote-unquote Bitcoin with utility, then fair enough. I don't know what to say. I was glad, of course, to share this. All right, so it says, well summarized. The idea inception was in 1997. Of course, this comes straight from Gilbert Verdian. It says, stemmed from security, had a concern with the fundamental insecure architecture of the internet. Again, you got to keep in mind, this is during Web 1, basically, right? Internet 1.0. So there was a better way to create a secure internet. Had to wait patiently for 20 years in my security career for Satoshi in 2008. Why? Because, again, that was the inception, if you will, of the Satoshi white paper. All right. And of course, as we know, Bitcoin became more available 2010, more adoption 2011. You know the history. Or you should at least. It says the technology was not there in 97 to create a more secure internet to complement the existing one. Firewalls were mainly routers with ACLs. Security was treated as part of networking. Wanted to bridge the details existing internet with a more secure enclave. On top of that, decided the best way was to have a career in security and wait for the technology to catch up. And basically, when it came to Gilbert Verdian and so on, look at where he worked at: CSC, EY, EWC, HSBC. Right, they gets brought up quite a bit. Still around. BP, Vocalink, heck, Mastercard. Right, UK government, AU government, US government, while working out how he can basically make the internet protocols better and more secure. On top of that, it says the protocols and architecture of the internet of today was designed without security in mind, of course, from the 1950s, resulting in ARPANET. You ever follow that before? Of course, Russia claimed years ago that they created the internet long before um, the rest of the world did, right? The United States and so on, right? And of course, if you ever seen that hit show, I think it was on FX, if I'm not mistaken. No, not FTX, literally FX, as in the TV station. It's called The Americans, right? They mention in a few episodes ARPANET. Highly recommend that show if you've never seen it. Really, really good show. Anyway, back to the subject. It says, they never envisioned the networks to be used in the way we do today. I call this new inter-network the NEO Network NN in 1997. The NEO network would sit alongside the internet and provide a way to do secure transactions and be designed with security protocols and able to transact money. The technology of the early 2000s was just not there. Right, absolutely wasn't. We're not even technically even to Web 2 yet. Technically speaking, Web 2 didn't really exist until we had full implementation of the likes of JavaScript and so on. And how do we know that? Look at basically Web 1 at those days. If you try to load up a video, the buffering in that and itself, you think you have buffering problems now with your Netflix and whatnot. Imagine trying to load up a video, right? This is talking about even before the days of YouTube, right? I remember when it was back, you're watching videos, you had to go on E-Bombs World, if you can remember back then. But the technology of JavaScript brought a lot to the table of things that we take for granted today, that is basically launched us and propelled us forward to Web 2. If you want to get a little bit more into the whole thing about the history of Web 2 and where we're at now, check out some of Charles Hoskinson's lectures about how we evolved from Web 2 to Web 3 and so on. He touches a lot on the subject of JavaScript. Anyway, going further, it says, then comes the Satoshi paper in October in 2008. Now, this is crucial, right? Because, again, it gives you a broader perspective of the relation of where Bitcoin was at, Gilbert Verdian, CEO of Quant's perspective, and how he basically implemented these things from Bitcoin, which, by the way, has no utility, no smart contracts, is not innovative, and applies that to the likes of Quant. So saw it a couple weeks after it was released and loved it. Whoever Satoshi are, well, in some cases it might just be one person, right? Satoshi Nakamoto. They or he understood security, decentralization, and internet scale networks, right? Absolute founder and pioneer of basically blockchain, right? It says, I was in the UK government at HM Treasury at the time during the financial crisis. Right. This is in perfect line of from there. Of course, we went into the recession and so on. Listen to this. Satoshi are on the right track. Decentralization is almost impossible in distributed systems. This is worth exploring and evolving. Being at a very senior level in the UK government, asked my colleagues to assess and do a policy on Bitcoin. In 2008, the UK was the first government to assess Bitcoin. Then, in 2013, moving from UK government to AU government, established the blockchain ISO standard TC307 in 2015. Again, man, look at where ISO 222 is. Look what Quant brings to the table with that in itself. And of course, we talked about that many times, but I don't want to go into a deep dive about that. Check out some of the other videos if you're new. You'll love the coverage. Anyway, it says, like TCP/IP, this was the right way to create a common framework for interoperable and secure blockchain networks. 57 countries now work on the standard, and even more since, of course, this was originally published. This right here was standards. My vision, of course, from Gilbert, from 1997 was becoming a reality. Create a more secure complementary internet that is designed for the future and embeds security into its core protocols. It was then I established Quant to shape the technology and apply the wealth of experience. And finally, and security expertise to make this mainstream for mass adoption. You're already seeing mass adoption, not necessarily from a retail point of view. If anything, how we achieve, like I mentioned before, the mass adoption through having an insane market cap is not necessarily through retail investors. right? It's going to be from the financial sector. And you see that going on right now with what they have with the connections at Cybos by basically having Swift basically approach them. And then on top of that, various other countries with CBDCs. We, of course, covered here at CTN a few of these key outlines. Like, for instance, you had a member from the Bank of France to reach out to Gilbert and the team saying, we realize what Quant brings to the table. We want to work with you. And the response was well received, because it wasn't, hey, you guys need to do a lot of focus to make you guys interoperable with us. The other way around. And with that said, it sends a real message to everybody out there of what Quant has and what it can deliver and what it can continue to deliver, I should say, with not just its interoperability, but how innovative they are by being just that, truly interoperable, by not making it so other companies have to put so much focus on being, quote unquote, well, like I would say, compatible, making it fully interoperable. So it says here, now we are at the beginnings of this evolution and can't wait for this milestone after its inception over 20 years ago. We'll have to write a book about the full story and details. Here's to building the future. Again, to me, in my humble opinion, this is the proof right here that Quant is truly the Bitcoin, but with utility, right? Smart contract, you name it. Smart security contract. So there it is in regards to that. Of course, we have a little bit more coverage we want to share with you guys. But again, that was the main emphasis, if you will, of this particular video. I was glad to be able to bring this to you. Now, this right here, all right, this kind of shows you even that much more. It says this was a deleted YouTube content. I don't know why it got originally deleted, but if anything, I want you guys to hear this, right? So, it's a presentation a while back from Gilbert Verdian, but if anything, it gives you a broader perspective of, for instance, like what you see here, Overledger, an operating system overlay to interconnect blockchains and networks. Listen to this, about 2 minutes, and of course, we'll come right back for some additional commentary.
Overledger is an operating system. It's an overlay. It sits on top of blockchain and existing networks. It's open. We've open sourced everything we can. The front end is open source. You can download Java, and Java's mainly for enterprise, and JavaScript to get started. You can start developing with those SDKs since September. It's interoperable. We can connect any to any in terms of existing networks, blockchain networks, different technologies. It's open to that method. And we're creating an ecosystem. So we want people to build on top of Overledger. We want you to innovate. We want you to create innovation. Just make stuff. And what we didn't want to do, we didn't create another blockchain. We didn't see that as the right way to do it. There's a lot of technology being developed where it's blockchain on top of another blockchain. That doesn't work from a scalability perspective. There's a lot of duplication. We're seeing people duplicating consensus from one blockchain to another and limiting how you connect. So you can't go any to any. You have to go through gateways. You have to go through hubs. You have to go from A to B to C to get to that destination. We don't see that as the right way. So the benefits that we've seen from our technology is we give enterprises choice. So for the first time, you've got choice to use a single blockchain through Overledger, but then have the benefit of all the other blockchains. So you're not limited to that one technology. We connect existing systems, and that's quite important. A lot of people talk about we need to decentralize the world and we need to change everything. We don't agree. You don't need to decentralize everything because there's mature technologies, there's mature networks that have been there for years and years, and they operate. We cannot turn those off. They need to operate, and the world needs them to run. So we're saying let's leverage those technologies, and we can actually interconnect what already exists. Which makes sense.
All right, so glad to be able to present that to you guys, or show what he presented a while back. And here's a key thing I definitely want to point out as well, and that is basically just this. Like he mentioned, it's not about like decentralizing everything because like he mentions, that necessarily won't exactly work. There's some things that just don't need to be decentralized. Even Elon Musk, right? He mentioned a while back, let's face it, even though, there's this whole modern technology of blockchain and hey, hoorah, let's be all pro, decentralization and so on. Fiat is technically going to always be around. Like Elon Musk basically explained a while back and so on. I don't remember the exact year it was, but there was a particular interview where he was mentioning that. Again, same example, right? It's not that everything has to be decentralized and so on. And I get it. There's always going to be people who are going to say everything has to be decentralized. Max, that's why we're here. I get where you guys coming from. But anyway, I wanted to show that because that was a really nice clip to show you guys. And if anything, there's also this wrapping things up. So especially if you're new to the likes of Quant and so on, I definitely want to show you this. On this particular one, I'm just gonna go ahead and full screen this a little bit more for you guys can have it a little bit bigger. So it says, just that. Why choose Quant Network, right? Sometimes people get asked that. Sometimes I get asked that on the live show. Max, why Quant, right? So Quant Network supports the development of multi-chain applications, MDApps, right? And connecting and enabling communication, of course, between different blockchains. Again, but Quant isn't a blockchain. They are the premier operating system in regards to just that when it comes to blockchains and so on. So it says Quant MDApps provide frictionless trading and a secure transaction method without needing a third-party intermediary. And I think that's the beautiful thing about Quant is, again, like some of their countless examples that we've had here at CTN, and that is basically, again, when they get approached, like the likes of Gilbert and the rest of his team and so on, it's not about, hey, you guys need to jump through all these hoops and go through all this red tape to be interoperable with us. No, it's like, no, we have basically we only need 3 lines of code and we're basically interoperable with you. And again, for all the people saying, well, there's so many other blockchains that are already interoperable. Again, they have made those statements. Quant hasn't necessarily made a statement where, of course, they're not needed. Why would they make that statement? But my point is, there's other ones I've heard, of course, people say, even on our live show, for instance, and don't get me wrong, I'm a fan of ALBT. I personally invested into it, but I'm looking to get into it. But people have made the statement, well, ALBT is already interoperable. Again, what makes ALBT interoperable? Technically speaking, they would need another layer. They would need an actual blockchain to be interoperable. Where on the other hand, with Quant, they don't need that. And as a result, that's less friction. Frictionless, as they basically pointed out. How about this one? Quant's tokenization solution allows for complete and seamless interoperability between different blockchains at scale while maintaining privacy and compliance without adding additional overhead or bottlenecks, right? Again, less of the red tape, or in this case, none of the red tape. QRC tokens, again, keyword QRC, not ERC. Remember, we established the difference earlier. The QRC20 tokens will support multiple distributed ledger systems, DLTs. They can be implemented on-chain, public DLTs, or off-chain, private DLTs to accommodate complex transactions between just that, multiple DLTs, right? And we basically seen that. If you think about, for instance, Ripple's Interledger and some of these other ones and so on, it just kind of makes that much more sense of how those can accommodate the complex and transactions between just those multiple DLTs. On top of that, with its renewed focus on CBDCs, Quant Network aims to facilitate open access to digital currencies issued by central banks. And again, that's just, of course, the start of it, right? There's so much more in regards to this. It would be too much to even put on one big screen right now. All right, so I'm going to come back into the frame. I just want, of course, to show you guys some of this. And if anything, like I mentioned, the main topic was basically, the whole thing of how Quant basically is truly the quote-unquote Bitcoin with utility. More attractive circulating supply, far less than Bitcoin, less total and max supply. And, of course, guys, I mean, smart, secure smart contracts, and of course what they've done with ISO, you name it. I mean, it's just, I'm so glad to be able to cover Quant, and I will continuously do just that. Can't thank you guys enough for staying from the beginning to the end of this particular video. And if you like our Quant coverage as well as some of the other ones that we talk about with ISOs, especially like with XRP, XDC, XLM, right, the triple X's and so on, watch our live show. It's 9 p.m. Eastern, 6 p.m. Pacific every single day of the week. Again, like, comment, subscribe, and hit that bell notification if you haven't done so already. Thanks again for watching. May you all have a blessed day, and we'll see you on the next one.